Zer Leonis has reached the Arcanis Imperial Academy, where his sister, Dara, was taken by evil agents of the Empire. He must win acceptance into a secret society within the school to gain access to the mysterious Area Null, where he believes Dara is being held. This secret order is loyal to the Academy's commandant and is part of his terrifying vision for the future of the Empire. In trying to save Dara, Zer will find his loyalty tested as never before and expose old friends to great peril.
Hello, younglings, and welcome back to the Padawan Library, the galaxy's only Star Wars junior novel podcast. I am Levi Paratic, and with me, as always, Tim May.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm going to start by saying I cannot guarantee a great episode today, but we're going to be talking about a great book. That's right. The first half of, We'll talk about it. But we're talking about Star Wars Rebels, Servants of the Empire, Book 4, The Secret Academy, written by Jason Frye.
Oh,
we're looking at each other on the FaceTime. We're both nodding. We're both smiling. If you got an idea of where this book is going, that's where it's going.
A lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about. And then along with this, 2 weeks ago, we announced that we would watch, since this was Book 4, The Secret Academy, we were going to watch Police Academy 4, Citizens on Patrol.
And so, listen, everybody. Last week, of course, we didn't have an episode, and that was entirely on me. I called Levi the day of, and I was just like, I'm just not feeling this today. And I feel like, it's what it is. I don't have any defense for that. Really.
Here's my thinking. We've already missed over a month's worth of episode this year. We're not on that same season 1 and 2 tiers of us just being on a roll.
Yeah.
We've had fumbles this season. It's our last season. Be happy that the show's going to go into November, people. You're going to have us around for even longer to stay up to date on current events. We talk about current events all the time on this show.
Not really.
We're just gonna be in your lives longer. So, you should actually be thankful every time we miss an episode because then we're around even longer. All
right. We don't need to dwell on it too much, but.
All right, hang on. I just got a text from you.
Oh, from me?
Yeah, from you. I wonder what this could be. It's a screenshot, and It is just a photo of your TV for Police Academy 4 Citizens on Patrol, and you got the play highlighted. What is this about, Tim?
All right, so here's what happened. I had it all worked out timing-wise to have the book read and watch the film before we were going to start. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday for those of you listening.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a call from friend of the show, Sam McCauley, at 7:50 a.m.
A little early.
And I did some car trouble, so I had to take him into work. And he worked. Okay. He lives about a 20-minute drive from me, especially at 8 a.m. during rush hour.
Mm-hmm.
And then he works.
You got to drive across town to his work, too.
And then his work is a half-hour drive from his apartment, and then it's basically a half hour back, not half hour, but 20 minutes back to my house. So I was gone for over an hour, and then I had a couple chapters of the book to finish the book, then you text me right after I finished the book saying, ready to go at 10. And I was like, well, I don't have time to watch Police Academy 4.
Well,
Citizens on Patrol.
Well, when you had called me last week, because you called me on Thursday,
Yes.
I had already watched it, and I already hinted to you that you were not missing anything. So rarely do I tune out of movies, and I completely tuned out of this movie. And I gave this movie a 1 star on Letterboxd.
Oh, shit.
So I'm going to go over some just broad things
Sure.
about it, and then I want to talk about another movie with you, a movie that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet.
Okay.
So we'll get into
Sounds
that.
fun.
All right. This movie, directed by Jim Drake. He went on to do some other films, nothing
Just
super major.
a journeyman.
Yeah. The poster for this movie was done by Drew Struzan. A waste of Struzan, in my opinion. All right.
No D at the end of that.
No, Struzan.
Yeah.
Struzan, sorry. This movie is, we talked about this the last time, this is the feature film debut of David Spade.
David Spade.
And David Spade plays a teenager, in quotes, teen. He doesn't look like a teen. He's part
How
of...
old would he have been at this point? This is 87?
This is 87. Let's see what year he was born. He was born in 64.
So he would be 23.
Yeah.
So
Somewhere in there. So so anyway, he plays a skateboarder, and he doesn't actually skateboard, but guess who his stunt double is in this movie?
wait,
Just skateboarder. Take a guess.
is it Tony Hawk?
It is Tony
That
Hawk.
is insane. Well, I mean that's the Bones Brigade era with Tony Hawk, so that's a big deal. Wow.
There's a big skateboarding scene in this. I'm sure it's Tony and his whole crew were the skateboarders.
I kind of want to watch it.
Well, here's the
That
whole
scene,
general.
at least.
Here's the whole gist of this film. This whole gist of the film is the police captain. He has a whole idea for a new program, the Citizens on Patrol program, which is going to be a volunteer program. Because here's the thing: people are afraid of the police. You want the people to think the police are their friends. So he's developing this volunteer program where people can volunteer to go to the police academy, learn to be cops, but not actually become cops. They don't get guns
Give
or
them
anything
even
like that.
less paid incentive to
not paid-
treat people well.
They're not paid at all.
Just
The
give
only thing
them
they
power, unrestricted power. That's all. That's all they
pretty
need.
much. That's all they need. And this also, too, is a volunteer program, but it's an overnight program. These people stay at the academy. They sleep at the academy. And the whole gist is David Spade and his buddy they're skateboarding, and then there's these 2 cops who are just like, hey, I told you kids not to skateboard here. They're led on this huge police chase, and then they want to go to jail. They're about to they actually get ruled guilty for obstructing justice, and they're about to go to jail for years when Gutenberg steps in.
Oh.
And Gutenberg's like, hey, we got the Citizens on Patrol program. Let's see if we can't rehabilitate these criminals. So that's where they come in. Gutenberg, this is his last Police Academy movie.
Well, he was too big a star by this point.
Well, and also, too, I've never seen any of these Police Academy movies, but Gutenberg, because he's kind of smarmy, to me, he kind of has an air of this, Andy Samberg quality to him, so I could see why he was popular. Sharon's...
There's that great Simpsons episode, The Stonecutters, where Homer gets involved in a Masonic lodge, basically, and they have this whole song about how they've ruined how they're behind everything. And it's who rigs every Oscar night? We do that. And there's a part where it's just who holds back the electric car? Who made Steve Gutenberg a star? We do. It's one of the funniest. I think about it all the time. Every time I see Gutenberg, that's all I can think of.
I can see why, yeah.
I don't even hate him or anything, but it's just but,
he's completely not offensive.
He's on the Albert Brooks, Charles Grodin spectrum at the very bottom. You know what I'm saying? He's if you can't get those guys or 50 other dudes, you get Gutenberg.
Get Gutenberg, yep. All right, this movie also features Sharon Stone, She is
Sharon Stone's in this?
Sharon Stone is in this. She
Western PA legend.
She basically is I don't want to say she's an instructor at the academy, and of course the one memorable thing she does is there's a pool scene, and she's wearing a white t-shirt and she jumps in the pool. That happens. That's about all the memorable things she does. And then this all culminates in these prisoners break out of jail, and they're going around the town causing havoc. And this is where the cop program, the Citizens on Patrol program, comes into play. And basically, after a hot air balloon chase, the criminals steal a hot air balloon, and then the police also steal a hot air balloon, and there is a hot air balloon chase.
So, are hot air balloons like a trope of this franchise? Because in my memory at least, the Police Academy 7 Mission to Moscow poster has them on a hot air balloon.
Well, the 4 has them on a hot air balloon.
I'm just mixing them up.
You may be thinking of that. You're thinking of the iconic Drusen poster.
We gotta look up the Mission to Moscow poster. Keep talking.
All right. And the one memorable thing about this scene is they do a kind of impressive stunt here where, if I remember correctly, the balloon with the criminals is below the balloon with the cops, and one of the cops jumps off of their balloon, out of the basket, onto the top of the criminal's balloon, and then rappels down the balloon. And you can tell from the wide shots that this was a stunt that was actually kind of done, so that's impressive for that. But that's all I have to say about this movie. I gave it 1 star.
I was wrong.
You were wrong. That's
just them in front of the Kremlin, basically.
Yep.
Something crazy. All right.
But yeah, this movie, I didn't think this movie was good, and but there's some fun little things about it. So,
sure.
But movie I do want to talk about that you and I have not talked about is fellow Pennsylvanian M. Night Shyamalan has a new movie out.
Okay.
Called Old.
Now,
and
can I set this up? Because I talked about this a little bit on the Tim Recommends that I dropped into the feed last weekend. And
we don't have to go into it very far.
No, I didn't talk that deep about it. I just want to say this is a movie that has been very divisive, I feel like. You have lots of people talking shit about it. And let me just put the caveat out there for all our listeners that I am a massive M. Night apologist. I like most of his movies, with the exception of Last Airbender and After Earth. And even I recognize that The Happening is not good, but it's very well directed in my opinion. So there's even some things about that I kind of like. But this movie, I get it, I guess, if you just don't like this guy's movies, but this guy as a director is working on such a fucking high level in this movie. The blocking in this is so inventive and crazy and unsettling. It is constantly keeping you off balance in very intentional ways. And when I see people say that it's this inept, you cannot like it. His stuff cannot be to your taste if you want, but you cannot claim that he doesn't know what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
It is the most he has such command of the craft. It's insane.
This movie is such a pressure cooker. This movie kept me on the edge so much, and even at moments too where there were moments too where the camera would be panning, and it feels like it's out of focus, but actually it's I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost like the camera's shaking, as if there's even the camera itself is under tension, sort of thing. There's
how people are kept at the edge of the frame all the time. So you have these wide open central spaces that it is a truly unsettling movie.
There's some super unsettling stuff in this movie too, that one. I'll say I don't want to spoil anything about this movie because I want people to see this movie. The cave scene, scene with the woman. Oh my god, that is unsettling.
I said on the Tim Recommends last week that I do think it's his best movie since The Village, which should be noted. I think The Village is one of the great films of the 21st century. One of a massive. I agree. So. That's very high praise for me, and I've liked a lot of his movies after that. So, I think what he's doing now, is very interesting. I can't wait for whatever the next film is. I'm glad this movie made money, even though there's these diabolical haters, and that's fine. Fine if you don't like.
Going to have these diabolical haters.
I'm fine if you don't like it, but don't tell me that it's like inept. That's my biggest thing. You're a lot like it's a taste thing. If you just aren't into the kind of thing he does, and he does try to do like weird shit all the time. With the tone of his movies is strange. The dialogue is stilted. Blah blah blah. But to pretend as though that's not like a clear and intentional part of how he makes movies, like I don't know. He's not like fucking like Ed Wood or Tommy Wiseau or something. Like he's like he is arguably, I think, on a pure like technical level, the best director of his generation. Like I'm not really like. This sounds hyperbolic. It's really not. Like, watch obviously the kind of breakthrough movies with like Sixth Sense and Unbreakable Signs and The Village. Those movies have broader fan support, I would say. But like, obviously you watch those and they're just impeccably crafted. But like even this one, this one I just think is one of the most inventive horror movies I've seen in a very long time, and it's not like it's been a bad era for horror. Lots of good horror movies coming out the last few years, but I think it's like I haven't seen something that's like it's not retro, it's not like it's not in some preordained style at all. It's like it's not Ghost.
Not Ghost in it at all.
Completely its own thing. I love it. I love it. I've seen a lot of movies this year. I've seen 3 that I believe are great. And this is one of them.
Well, this is definitely on the top of my list for the year so far.
The other 2, by the way, are The Green Knight and Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which is hilarious.
Okay, I needed to see that one. you praised that movie to the high heavens.
That movie. That movie is so funny. But those are the 3. Everything gets a bump because I'm just grateful to have movies back, but
speaking of that, did your movie open with an intro by Shyamalan?
Yes, where he's just like, I've been so happy to make original thrillers for so long. Like,
yeah, I'm so happy to get to experience in a theater.
All that,
my only. I don't even want to call this a criticism.
Sure.
I like 95% of this movie.
I don't think we can get into what you're about to...
I don't want to get into it because I think it kind of treads on a little bit of how Glass ends. A little bit. It's a little similar to Glass.
I agree.
But the problem is I've been racking my brain at this. I can't think of a better solution. Well, I don't think the solution exists.
I don't want to get too deep into this because I don't think we can talk about it much without spoiling it. But I'll say I think the better solution, quote unquote, would be no solution.
I thought that too, but I figured that just pissed people off. Nobody would people would be.
But who cares about those people? Are going to be pissed off regardless.
Yeah, I know. I agree too because
I don't know. I don't. By the way, I don't. Obviously, you guys could probably tell we're talking about the ending, and we're not going to go deep into it. I don't hate the ending, but I do think it's the least successful part of the movie by far. It's like
I agree.
I think it's like conceptually okay, cool idea, but that should have been. If you really wanted to make... I think that was just a way for him to explain what was happening, as opposed to that's what he's... I don't think that's what the movie's about at all. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So the movie's like about much broader existential problems than whatever is going on, you know? So I do think it kind of feels like a... we shouldn't talk too much more.
We shouldn't talk about it. We'll change the subject to the emotion of this movie. The family dynamic of the main family is just incredible.
And Vicky Creeps from Phantom Thread was incredible. Happy to see her again. And
our boy Miles from Lost.
Oh, shouts to my king.
Force Awakens legend, Miles.
Ken Leung, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, no, definitely check that one out.
And speaking of a friend of the show, Sam McCauley.
Yeah, he gave it 3.5 stars on
him, and I have not spoken recently. I gave a 3.5 to Jungle Cruise, which I think was being generous.
You gave that movie 3.5?
Oh, maybe I give it 2.5.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you gave it 3.5. I would give it probably about 3.5. I kind of like it. I don't think it's great, but I think it's fun.
It's nothing we haven't seen in 5 Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Agreed.
Anyway.
If Gore were directing it, would be 100 times better.
Yeah, there's no real set piece.
We don't need to get into Jungle Cruise.
Anyway, this offended him, and I know this offended him because he texted you about it.
He's still mad about it. He talked about it this morning. He's like, I can't fucking believe him.
Well, you need, next time you see him, tell him I'm pissed at him over his old rating because he gave it 3.5 stars, which is insulting. There is no way.
I also thought that both him and another friend of the show, Brooke White, were far too dismissive of The Green Knight, which I think is a masterpiece.
Yeah, well, I agree with that too. I agree.
You saw that movie?
I saw The Green Knight. I think The Green Knight, masterfully crafted film, like on a whole other level of craft.
Yeah.
As a movie, I find it a little confusing. I was a little confused by the movie, but I'm sure there's a lot of people confused by the movie, and I don't have that. It's nothing against the movie. It just wasn't. It just didn't.
It completely. It's going to be very hard for a movie to supplant that for me for this year, but we don't need to talk about it. I'm not mad at you. I understand.
We got Paul Thomas Anderson coming out.
Yeah, but David Lowery has already reached that level for me. I love this guy. The new Paul. Good lord.
New Paul, new Wes, new Jeff Tremaine.
Oh, Jackass 4, yeah. Okay. All right, so we do have a book to talk about. So
we do.
When we come back, we're going to talk about the finale, the Servants of the Empire finale, The Secret Academy. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Padawan Library. I'm Tim May, here as always with Levi Peretic.
Hello.
And this week, we are finishing up a series. Too soon, in my opinion. Although, actually, I'm happy it was this short, too, in a lot of ways. But Servants of the Empire, number 4, The Secret Academy by Jason Frye. This series has been great so far.
This is how tie-in books should be done.
Absolutely.
Like the way that this story weaves in and out of Rebels episodes and how Rebels episodes affect the final outcome of this.
But you could still read this entirely on its own, I feel like.
Exactly.
Without having watched Rebels, and you can obviously watch Rebels without reading this. It's
exactly.
Like they work totally side by side with each other.
It's crazy. Yeah. And also too, Jason Frye, he has a list a mile long of things he's done. He's worked on Essential Guides, Star Wars Atlases. He did the Last Jedi novel.
Yeah.
Yep. And then but that's like his big things are, and he did a bunch of Clone Wars novelizations, basically adapting episodes into book form. This is really the only original Star Wars story. He's done some shorts too, but the length of this, it's only it's the original story he's done, and I think he needs to do more of them.
Is he involved in High Republic?
He's not actually. He's not involved in High Republic. He does have his own book series called the Jupiter Pirates.
Sounds cool.
This is a part, hang on, it doesn't say how many, I think, 1, 2, 3, there's 3 of them, okay, and then there's some short stories. I'm sure those are exciting. They were put out by HarperCollins, but in terms of, he needs to do more original Star Wars stuff, like this, because
I'm gonna go out on a limb. And I'm not saying, obviously, this podcast, the saint of this podcast, is Jude Watson, and will forever be. And I have more attachment and affection for all those books, and I think some of them individually are better than any of these. But as a series, just in terms of a hit ratio, this is the best thing we've ever read.
I couldn't agree more.
I mean, it's only 4 books. It's a little unfair, but all 4 are great.
Mm-hmm. And the second book's the lowest.
Yeah, but even
But even then, I think we both gave it an 8. And
that was almost just because we went high on the first one, so we kind of have to dock it a little bit. But it's because it's a little less good. But these I mean, it really functions as a full story, but each book is also, pretty, compelling on its own. Like, so that a show like ours, where we discuss them one at a time, you can still do that. And, we should just get into it, because this is incredible. I'm excited.
I'm seeing now on the Wikipedia page that they have a development tab about these books, about this book specifically, and I'll just read this here because it sounds interesting. Jason Frye considered his book, The Secret Academy, fun in comparison to that of Imperial Justice, which he considered torture to write. The book uses the narrative idea of the beginning section with the section of the story featuring Zer, then switching between... I have to stop here too, because we haven't talked about this on the show. Jason Frye himself has corrected us on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
He listened to one of the episodes.
Thank you to Jason for listening.
And he gave us the proper pronunciation of who I was calling Mary.
Yeah.
And what were you calling her?
Mariah, maybe.
Yeah, I think you're closer for sure. It's Murray, according to him.
Murray?
He has it written as, the way he says it's pronounced is M-U-H, and then he put in all caps R-A-Y, Murray.
Murray. Okay.
Murray. Okay, so then back to Wikipedia. Then switching between Murray and then bringing the two characters together. Frye had considered the idea for Imperial Justice, but rejected it. For Secret, so he was going to do that for the Imperial Justice of doing the two parts, okay? The Secret Academy, however, felt these intercuts allowed the reader to feel the separation and anxiety between Zer and Murray.
Let's be clear, because in the previous books, you kind of cut back and forth between the two characters, chapter to chapter, and this book, you have one section that's entirely Zer, one section that's entirely Murray, and then a kind of a climax where they come together. Yep. So, I did think that was a more effective way of telling the story in a lot of ways. But I don't know if it would have been more effective necessarily in the previous book. I think this one, because this is the most separate they've ever been, because now...
They have no contact in between each other either. So
Zer is off on another planet, and so
and they're technically broken up at this point too. There was a breakup in the last book too.
That makes sense, and it was a smart structural decision because
you're
reading the first half of the book and you're like, and there's the one scene where they talk, and we'll get to that, but you feel kind of his isolation there because he doesn't have anyone there except possibly another character that we'll get to, and that's a possibility, not a guarantee. So anyway, let's jump in. Let's talk about it. Let's go beat by beat here.
Apparently, also while writing this book, he received a note from the story group about the death of the Grand Inquisitor. So he had to at first that was apparently a challenge.
Established as the villain of this series in the early books.
And then he gets killed, of course, by season 1 of Rebels. And actually, apparently, this actually worked to Frye's advantage because it's now I have, this sort of, this way out for this character. And in a way, he introduces a new villain in a way. We'll get into that.
We'll get to that. I think that while in some ways maybe that makes individually the series feel a little more nebulous shape-wise, I do think that emotionally what this whole series has been about, where you kind of have where it ultimately winds up with the kind of final obstacle he has to face, ties thematically into what all these books are about more than the Inquisitor would.
Which I think thematically, in that sort, the real enemy of the story, the real villain of the story, is the Empire.
And more abstractly, it's Imperial complacency. So, people, when people would tell me about these books in the past, they would often talk about, well, it shows that not everyone in the Empire is evil. That's true, I guess. But it kind of shows that the worst thing about the Empire is the fact that people feel secure. It makes people feel secure so that they can kind of ignore the atrocities being committed by the Empire because it makes otherwise good people feel like nothing's wrong. So I guess and we'll get to all this, but
yes.
Anyway, let's go.
All right. I've read the first part of this book, the Zare part, last week, so you're going to be a little hotter on it than I am.
All right. So Zare has been transferred off of Lothal to an academy on what's the planet called?
The academy is. I had this somewhere. I know it just.
I read this book digitally, so I don't.
Arcanus.
Arcanus, yeah. That because he believes that his sister Dara is being held there. Information he found out from Ezra was that that's probably some sort of force-sensitive program, and so he's been sent there, transferred there by the Inquisitor. So he's there, and he gets kind of placed with this unit of officer cadets, and they basically go through a lot more kind of training stuff. We've seen kind of this sort of cycle in these books before, except now there is trying. There is a I can't remember his rank, but there's a Hux of some sort.
They're Hux. This is actually Hux's dad.
So I wonder, would this character be played by Brendan Gleeson, Donald Gleeson's father?
It should be. Yeah. It should be. So, and this is Brendel Hux is his name.
Oh, then I hadn't even thought of that. Oh, good one, Jason Frye. I appreciate that. Okay, so that's clearly a reference.
This is not an I don't know if he created the character or not. If it's the first appearance.
Oh, did he appear in like a comic book? Or something?
You keep going, and I'll figure out if this is his first appearance.
This guy is kind of in charge here, but he's kind of created his own followers. So he has like this special elite squad that he like.
The Commandant's cadets.
The Commandant's. He's Commandant Hux. That's what it is. The Commandant's cadets. So like, if you're a very impressive cadet, you'll be invited to join this cabal of cadets. Cadet cabal. So and so at this point he thinks, well, and he figured out that this thing that's holding his sister is probably in this big tower, and they have the cadet cabal has their meetings in that tower. So he's like, in order to get to that tower, I gotta impress people enough that I can become a part of this cabal. And so
this is his first appearance, by the way.
Oh, great! So shouts to Jason Frye.
And
also too.
Also, too, this book series came out right around the same time as Force Awakens.
Well, this book came out before all these books came out before Force Awakens. This one is, I believe, October of 2015. And so they had come out over the previous year. Yeah. Anyway, there's.
Well, let's talk about the one training mission. So there is a kid who is Zare's kind of friendly with. They're out on this big training thing. I can't remember if this is this isn't the planet with the gravity thing. No. But they're on this live ammunition training mission, and one of the kids fall behind, and the kids of the commandant's crew, they're just like, leave him behind. He's weak, sort of thing. Zare, on the other hand, being a no soldier left behind kind of guy, he's like, I'm gonna go back and help him, and then the comms cut out. Their comms are jammed. He goes back to catch the kid, and then he's hit by like live artillery, by like a missile, and the kid is killed. And then there's like no investigation about it. They're just like, oh, it was an accident, sort of thing.
This all plays into what happens next, which is basically that he at some point in here, by the way, he does contact his parents.
He talks to his mom for a little bit.
Talks to his mom for a bit, and then his mom asks him to call
because
Murray.
One of the students takes him into town. They have a free day. They goes into town, and he sees what's that fruit that's on?
God, I've been terrible with this.
It's crap.
I don't have the book in front of me. So.
I know.
It's very important to this book, though.
It is very important to this book. Okay. Anyway, that low fall fruit that we will mention later once we figure out what it is. He sees it there. Jogan fruit.
Jogan fruit.
Right?
Yes.
Jogan fruit. And but there's also a place in town where you can calm anybody, and it's apparently not under Imperial surveillance. So that's when he talks to his family. So
yeah, he talks to them and then talks to Murray, asks her if she can do some slicing. She says no. She thinks that she's like, you were sent there. The Inquisitor approved your transfer. Like, they want you there. Like, you need to get out of there. And he's just like, well, I can't get out of here without Dara. And she's like, I get it. I understand. So that's their one contact during this story, and so until the end. And
he does have a confrontation with the Inquisitor. There's a big banquet scene.
Oh yeah, because the Inquisitor comes to visit.
Yeah, the Inquisitor basically calls him out. They go out on a balcony. Inquisitor gets all in Zare's face, but then the Inquisitor is called away, and it's about those damn insurgents on Lothal.
So he returns to Lothal, which is where he dies ultimately. Mm-hmm. And so he Zare then at a certain point, Zare is impresses some of the members, the Commandant's cadets, enough that he gets invited to possibly join, and says, you have to prove your loyalty to the Empire and essentially kill one of your fellow cadets.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time as this is happening, what's the guy's name from?
Cryon.
Cryon appears, and if you remember, Cryon was a supervisor at the Lothal Imperial Academy, who's like a decent guy. Like, he's not like he's trying, and he recognizes that there's problems with the Empire, but he thinks it's individual bad actors.
Yeah, it's the bad apples, and he's apparently sent to this academy by Tarkin himself
to investigate Hux, because Hux is becoming too charismatic, too powerful, creating loyalty of his own, and the Emperor doesn't like that, as we know from Shadows of the Empire days. Even Prince Shizor, get out of here,
Yeah.
So
now, what I do want to talk about. There's a couple interesting scenes with Hux. There's two interesting scenes. The one involves Zare's being inducted into this group. But, I mean, how does he get inducted to the group? Does he kill the guy? But anyway.
That's what we'll get to that. Just Cryon, though, helps Zare not kill this other cadet. Because they kill an animal and bury it in a cadet's clothing. And Zare tells these other cadets, the Commandant's cadets, that he already murdered the kid they wanted him to murder before they asked him to, because he's like, why let him live any longer, basically. And then they believe him because they try to dig it up and it's like stinks, and like wow, you're ruthless as fuck,
Yeah.
And so that's when we get to this Hux scene that you're talking about.
Well, there's the other Hux scene too, where do you remember the scene on the cliff with the Nerfs?
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay, so basically they're not allowed to go to the beach, all right? And they don't know, Zare doesn't know why. Well, one day Brendel Hux, he takes all of the kids out to the beach, and he points to look. It's like, there's a Nerf down there by the beach. Watch. Then you see an eye stalk pop out of the water. A bunch of tentacles come out, and it takes the Nerf away. And he's like, the reason it comes down here is because the Nerf's like the salt of the ocean. Now, how do we get them from stop coming down the beach. And they're like, well, the kids are throwing out solutions. One kid's like, build a fence. Well, he's like, well, a fence would cost money. Fence would get in the way. Another kid's like, well, supply salt for them. And then I can't remember, one of the kids is like, get them to not like the salt, and basically like beat the yearning for salt out of them when they're young, and then as they go through generation, they won't want salt. Very creepy scene kind of thing, very kind of dark. And then this gets into our other dark scene where Zer, he is being He's being inducted into this group, and basically Hux gives this speech about, we don't want clones in the army anymore, and, sort of thing.
He explains how the clones, like the Separatists during the Clone Wars would, we would try to create viruses that would target clones, and, as a way to wipe them out quickly, and so that was initially... According to that, anyway, I don't know what the Bad Batch says. I don't know, but that was why they moved into a civilian force or civilian recruited force, I should say. And then it says basically, because if you remember the one guy they knew early on in the series, what?
Oh wait, no. Oh, I know who you're talking about.
No, we'll get to Beck.
Yeah.
That one guy they knew. He became a stormtrooper and became this kind of mindless zombie, and it was essentially the idea that you could create the compliance of clones without the kind of risk of without creating an entire other species essentially that would have things in common with each other. So this is entirely it's super fucked up.
I think what he also too is because the way the Bad Batch makes it, the way I
have not watched the Bad Batch.
Bad Batch doesn't really go into this, but the way I view it is that why spend money on clones when you can have free labor, basically, right, by just making people join the military. So that's how I kind of view the transition there. But what Hux I think is getting at too is this idea that sets up for Finn in Force Awakens that, oh, well, if we just kidnap children, we can raise them to be soldiers from one...
He compares it... He's like, we learned that from the Jedi, basically. Which,
right.
Yeah.
You teach them from birth how to be warriors, sort of thing. So I think he's hinting at this idea that the First Order implies, which because Hux, his son, is
And I wonder if this Hux is involved... Does he die? I'm blanking.
He does not die. He does not die.
Yeah. I wonder if he's kind of like the founder of the First Order or something.
He could be.
I don't know much about the kind of the First Order. I don't know how they've really developed that outside the movies. So.
I don't know either, because it's all mostly in comic books. It's not really and no shots at the comic books, but to me, the comic books are a lower grade of the canon. I feel like a book is more important. You agree? Okay, all right.
It depends. I mean, whatever. Supposedly, everything's on the same level now, which I think has not necessarily borne out. But I do. I mean, whatever. We don't need to. I think there have been great Star Wars comics in the past. I'm not very familiar, although I've actually read a lot of the current ones, and they're pretty good too. Anyway. So all of this is leading up to. There's what's this program called? An old
Harvester.
Harvester, yeah.
Yeah.
Which was the program that Beck, if you remember, was sent to.
Or was he put? No, he was sent to Project Unity.
Unity.
His sister's part of Project Harvester.
Right. So Project Unity, if you remember, Beck was a old Gravball teammate of Zer's, who then was a native of Lothal, hated what the Empire was doing, started an insurgent group, basically, and then he gets arrested and sent to this retraining program, Project Unity. And that's also in this tower. And so, at this point, Zer sees Beck, and it's like, oh shit, that's Beck, and Beck's been entirely wiped, basically.
And I feel like,
brainwashed.
This is where part 1 ends. It ends on this fact. And Beck, they just say Beck reacts, and I picture Beck reacting in that Invasion of the Body Snatchers way. Where
Donald
just,
Sutherland.
The finger goes up, and there's a scream.
That movie is unreal. If you, for our listeners who haven't watched Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
We've talked about that movie before on here.
Great movie. Phil Kaufman, the technically the co-creator of Indiana Jones, I believe. Shouts to Phil. He made The Right Stuff, also another great movie.
Great movie.
So he's got 2 classics under his belt. Some other okay movies too, but anyway.
Part 2, all about Murray. Yes. Mulray. So this is all about her, and you figure she just got over the whole thing with what was his name? Jix. Jix just helped her
get over it. Jix, remember, because she left off this last book having inadvertently led to the death of.
This was the guy I was trying to talk about. What was his name?
Is it Lox? Not Lox.
Lox or Lux. I think it's Lux.
It's not that. It's not that.
No? Alright. Well, anyway.
I'm sorry. If Jason Fry's listening, I'm sorry. We're not retaining these names.
We're sorry.
We know the story, I promise.
He's dead, and she feels bad about it.
All right.
But anyway, this is the first time she sees Jix since that event, and Jix basically
And remember, there was some romantic tension between them.
Yes, and Jix basically knows what's happened here. Alright. Now, meanwhile...
And he resents her for it.
Meanwhile... An episode of Rebels happens where the Spectre team, they take over the comms tower, they send out the message, and then the Empire destroys the comms tower. So this is the next big part of this because, all the comms are out, that sort of thing. And that's when the Empire, they start digging, and they start doing interviews at her school. And she's worried because she's worried the first thing that's going to pop up is the fact that her and Jix swapped her photo. And,
with an anonymous, like another person from the other side of the planet.
Yes. And they had a fight because she goes to bring it up and he's like pissed at her and he storms off and he goes, I'll change it, sort of thing. Well, she gets into the interview. The guy pulls up the photo. And it's not her, it's the other girl, and the guy's and she's like, oh, I've been telling them to fix that, and they won't, and the guy chuckles about it, interview goes fine. Well, then Jix has his interview, and she goes, well, how'd your interview go? He's like, oh, not bad, we just talked about, repeaters and bouncing signals off of this, and this is where a huge red flag comes up, because she's like, oh no, we did not talk about anything like that. So she's worried about Jix. So she goes to her class, and then next thing you know, Imperials come in, and he is dragged out by stormtroopers. So she hops on to the net, the holo net. She's trying to figure things out, and the girl who her photo is on her thing is also set to be arrested. So she knows the jig is up. There's only a matter of time before it all falls apart.
Blew me away what happened next. Like, the way this all happens, I was blown away by it. Now, let's also remember she's in the early part of this section.
Yes, I'm forgetting a whole part of it.
She has, there was one of the people, the poet who was being protected by the crime boss that she worked for. She's worried about him because he no longer has protection from the Empire.
Holsef. Is his name.
And so she goes and she wants to get him off world, but there's a blockade. It's very hard to get off world. And so she had already set up a situation where she was going to get him off world before all of this shit goes down.
With the help of another guy who she used to deliver for as the courier. She used to deliver old Gravball tapes to a guy by the name of Old Joe. Old Joe,
Joh, I believe.
Yeah, yes, and he runs a cantina. He's
So all of this, she knows she has to meet. So she knows she has to meet up with and get Holsef to Old Joe, who can get him off planet. But now she needs to get off planet, and she's like, you know what? I'm not going to go without my parents, even though they're both Imperial security people. If I just tell them to meet me at this bar, they will. I'll explain it to them, and they'll have to understand. And so
she also downloads a bunch of Imperial documents too with her old login that she got in like book 2. You know, she has all this proof that they've done horrible things.
Right. So she goes to Old Joe's cantina, and he's just like, "Hey, what are these Imperials doing? Like, I thought there wasn't gonna be any trouble." And she's like, "Those Imperials are my parents, and I'm wanted. Like, they don't know where I am yet, but we need to get to a safe house and get off planet as quickly as possible." And so, obviously her parents are pissed, but then they let her explain what's going on, and she's just like, "Here's all the evidence I have, and like read that, and if you're not convinced, you know, we'll see what happens." But they wind up being very understanding.
Her father does something really funny. At first he's like, "Oh, I'm impressed, but we're also very disappointed in you." You know,
they kind of get the vibe with them that it's like they've been working for the Empire, and they're the side. They're what I was talking about earlier, where it's like they are good people who, like, they might have sensed that something wrong was happening, but they didn't know. But when they find out and they know, then they're like, "Okay, we can't be a part of this, of course, and we want to escape with you and all that stuff." And so, whereas another character maybe later is the different side of that. But this, and then she's like, "I also have to get Zare's parents off world because they're going to come after him because I have a connection to him." And so they go, and remember, Zare's mother already knows everything and knows everything about what's been going on with Dara and all that stuff.
Yeah, and Moray goes with her mother to the
Leonis, I believe.
The Leonises, and her father stays with Old Joe and Holsef because they have to get Old Joe's ship up and running. Apparently, the Spectre team, we'll call them, were supposed to be the ones, but they can't get on the planet. So now they got to get Old Joe's old freighter up and running before they can even leave. So he's working on that, and then they go to pick up Zare's parents.
And so Zare's mother is, of course, all about this, and remember, Zare's father is like a true Imperial patriot, has never acknowledged that there's anything shady about what happened with his daughter. Like, all this stuff, and he's in disbelief, and so
Moray, she has
to stun him.
Yeah, she first pulls a data pad out and is like, "Here, I have proof of all the
those
horrible
are lies,
things."
Those are
yeah,
lies.
He literally throws it out of her hand, like, and then she's like, "Well, I gotta stun him," so she stuns him.
They carry him, and he eventually comes around. So they eventually they do get out. Is it on Old Joe's ship? Or?
It is on Old Joe's freighter, and they are just about to hit a blockade of speeder bikes. The stormtroopers are just about to stop them, because this whole time, this is what I really like about this part of the story is, you know, it's only a matter of time before the Empire catches on, and they have to do all these little things in order before they can get off the planet. And it's just like, when is this going to backfire? When are they going to get caught? There's there's always this sense of doom during this whole time. And you have this moment where they're surrounded by speeder bikes, and Moray, she pulls out a blaster. She's going to just start killing people. And her mother's like, "No, we can't. Like, it's over." But that's when Old Joe shows up with his freighter. He blasts the speeder bikes. They all get on. They get off planet. And then that's when we get to part 3 of the book, the Tower.
I'm trying to remember, because the Tower begins and Zare has been apprehended.
Yes, it starts with the trial.
Starts with a trial. How exactly did Zare get arrested?
Because of Beck.
Beck, right, of course. Because Beck recognized him, of course.
Yeah, Beck recognized him. Right, that's how he ends up. Yeah.
So anyway, he's arrested, and he's on trial, and he's on trial for pretty much everything. And
he admits to everything.
And he pleads guilty. Pleads guilty, and then they give him a final statement, and he says, he basically says, like, the Empire sucks. I hope, like, obviously I'm going to die, but more people feel like me, and they're not going to be able to kill everybody. All this stuff. And he's hoping, I think, to appeal to Cryon, the kindly Imperial officer who's been looking out for him this whole time. And Zer is assigned to be executed the next morning, and by firing squad. So Zer goes back to his cell.
Now before this is just Hux. This is Hux here. Yeah. Before he is assigned to ruled that he's set for death, the Commandant's crew rip his clothing off, and they even because he's in his Imperial uniform, his best, and they rip it off of him. He has a saber. They snap his saber in half. It's like they spit in his face before they say they're gonna send him. They're gonna kill him.
Send him to the cell. Cryon comes by and is just if you, I can maybe try to get your sentence commuted and all that stuff. And he's just no, I'd
you'd have to join Project Unity to do that, which is you'd have to be brainwashed.
And so he's I'm not going to do that. You should join me. And he's just no, there's just, some bad people in the Empire. It's not all bad. Cryon basically says. And then Cryon's what do you want your last meal to be? And he also talks to Beck at this point.
Yeah,
and Beck is totally brainwashed. But basically Beck saying, you don't understand. I now know why they had to destroy my planet. That's for progress or whatever. And so he talks to Beck first and then Cryon. And Cryon's basically well, if you're not going to accept my help, then, you can at least give me what you want for your last meal tomorrow. And
which... He tells him, then he also tells him to have Beck bring it.
Yeah.
And so the next morning Beck arrives, and it's 2 Jogan fruit. And Zer, he rips that Jogan fruit open, and he's smell this to Beck. And that is all that it takes to unbrainwash Beck.
And Beck's just oh shit, fuck these people, I'm with you. And so then they stage a breakout. And,
using grav ball, the way they
use grav ball plays. They're run this play.
The team is back together. And they run this play. They get blasters. They are shooting stormtroopers left and right. They have to figure out where his sister is, Dara, and they're basically cornered. And then they hear a ship land on the top. Explosion. It's Moray. With
everybody,
with Zeb, with Dev Morgan, who is still Dev Morgan at this point,
Ezra.
and the Mandalorian girl who's never named.
She is named at the end.
Okay, at the very end.
And I'll actually talk about that a little bit, but we'll get to that. So they get there, and then they wind up getting separated,
But the story always, because it's Dev Morgan, Sabine, and Zeb, they go off, and then Zer, Moray, and Beck, they go after Zer's sister. Zer finds his sister. She's in a detention block. She's kind of scared. She thinks this is all a dream.
And she's just these are just his tricks. And I actually have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
She says, this is one of his tricks, and he's just no, he's dead, he's not going to hurt you or anybody else. And then he gets her out of there, but they never, revisit that, really. But, do you think, actually, she wasn't talking about the Inquisitor? She was talking about, Vader?
She could have been. She very well could have been. There could have been anybody she could have been talking about there.
I was just thinking of that, and I was whoa. Anyway, so...
And then, they get cornered in the cell block, and Moray, she has a thermal detonator that Sabine gave her, and Beck's just I only see one way out of here, and he grabs that thermal detonator, and he runs out there, and he basically sacrifices himself for them, kills a bunch of stormtroopers, they get out there, and then they get cornered one more time because there's a squadron of stormtroopers between the two teams. And it's it's over here. And it's actually Cryon. It's Cryon, he has a blaster pointed at Zer. Zer has a blaster pointed at him. And Cryon's it's over. There's no way out of this. You're done. And Zer, he makes one last attempt to get Cryon on his side. and then he fails, and next thing you know, Dara, she starts screaming, and there's this huge rumble, and the wall comes tumbling down on Cryon and the stormtroopers, and they, Murray, she's just like, what just happened here?
And Zara's just like, don't tell anybody. Like,
don't tell
obviously
anybody.
It's some of that Force shit, but don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
And so they escape into the Ghost, the ship from Rebels, and they fly off to this planet where I guess it'll be a safe haven for them for the time being, which is whatever the name of the planet. It's the planet that they go to from Lothal in Rebels. I'm blanking on the name of it, but
let's see here. I can look this up real quick. Yada yada yada. But anyway, both Moray's families and Zara's family is there.
And they're all there, and Dara, the sister, is very shell-shocked, obviously, and she's kind of... and her reunion with... and she tells...
Garel is the planet, by the way.
Garel, yeah. She tells Zare that she had a vision, basically, of that escape, and that it had come true, and she's not true... She still was untrue if it was real, and so she didn't want to go to sleep. And then Zare sits with her until she actually falls asleep and all that stuff. And then
something she says too is that he made me tell him about my visions. So it could be an Inquisitor, it could be Vader, sort of thing.
You don't know. Yeah. So she and then Zare and Murray reunite. They kiss. He's just like, I missed you so much, etc., etc.
I made a promise to myself once I saw you to never let go of you again.
Beautiful. And so, and then Zare. The last scene of the book is Zare and Dara. They land on the planet, and Zare and Dara reunite with their parents, and it's a wonderful scene. Because even the father is just like, to
see his daughter again.
Yeah, to see his daughter again, and he hugs Zare and pounds him on the back, just like, this guy knew what was up the whole time. I respect my son, and
and also too, I think it's him and Murray. They have the conversation where it's like, oh, my mother's making new identities for us. We can find somewhere to live together, and he's like. And then he's just like, well, I don't think it's right for us to stop fighting. If we don't fight this empire, then it will rule forever.
And he wants to go back to Lothal because Beck sacrificed himself so that they could help Lothal, basically. So that's kind of the impression I get, and that is where the book ends.
And it's a happy ending, and it covers inspiring ending. No storyline is left unresolved. The whole thing, it from the use of the grav ball later. The whole story overall, it's conceived in midichlorians.
Yeah, it's the most conceived book. This series is so conceived in midichlorians.
The whole series is conceived. Yeah,
off the charts. I feel like conceived in midichlorians in this case means not conceived in Shmi Skywalker's womb, conceived out of nothing. Just appears, little baby known as Servants of the Empire just materializes out of thin air.
The Force wills it. I mean, we've basically already said this. This is as good as the work of Jude Watson, and I think when we are all said and done with the series, and we are talking about what are the best series we read,
I think pound for pound, this is the best one. That does not necessarily mean it's my favorite, but it.
I agree. Yeah. I agree, but this is I think hands down. It's cohesive. And it's we've
Last of the Jedi is also very high on that.
Yeah, because Last of the Jedi...
Because that's also shorter. It's 10 books.
It's also shorter, and it's more of an original story like this. Yeah. I would actually compare those two together.
Yeah, I think if you like one, you should check out the other. For sure.
Yeah, I agree. And then the way Last of the Jedi weaves into... It just weaves into the storyline.
No.
These books do all sorts of weaving, too. And, I mean, there's nothing more to say.
It's thrilling. I'm glad we've saved this one And I hope Rebel Force is going to be great. I'm glad we saved these for near the end because it gave us a real good kickstart to go into the last run here, I feel like. It's because, a lot of this year has been reading kind of the detritus, and some of it we really liked, Adventures in Wild Space and stuff like that. But a lot of it is just kind of this random one-off stuff. And, it's not that it's been bad, but I'm just like, there's a reason that as an adult, grown man, I don't read this stuff. And that's not an insult. A lot of them are very well done and well executed. But this series has been awesome. I can't wait to return to Jude's world in a few weeks, and it's all very exciting.
You had mentioned this too before, that if you took these books and made one book out of it,
this would have been
one full novel,
a great Star Wars novel.
Yeah, I agree. It's great as it is, but it would be great as one thing too. And I think because whenever we started this too, for whatever reason, I had no hopes going into this series. I was always kind of dismissive of this series. I had no real kind of, I had no hopes.
Well, you never even finished Rebels, so that might be why.
But this series, it just blew me away. It just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. It also, from around the same time, if you like a very popular Star Wars book, Lost Stars, I think you would like this a lot. This isn't quite as operatic, but it's also about a teen romance set of
right, which is something we've never gotten hardly in any.
Yeah, because we've never Lost Stars is young adult, so we don't cover young adult.
Yeah, we
books.
don't cover that, and all the other stuff we got. The closest we've got is Obi-Wan trying to hook up with that princess and Jedi apprentice, and that is just
Obi-Wan
awkward.
Obi-Wan and Siri, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway. Qui-Gon and Tall are the one true. Anyway.
The one true.
And that is the true. So anyway, have we covered it?
I think we covered it. Yeah,
it's great. Check these books out. I think the print versions might be out of print, so some of them are going for weird prices, but you can get them digitally if you have Amazon Prime. They're free on that. But throw some money towards Jason. I don't know how much of the royalties. I don't know what the royalty structure is. Maybe they're not going to him, and maybe it doesn't matter at all. But you don't need to answer that question, Jason. Feel free. That's private information. But I'm just saying, obviously try to find them at a good non-Amazon bookstore. But if you want to just read them, they are available. You can find them.
Yeah, I would even go as far as this. If you were to listen to the show and you've never read any of these books before, and if you were to only read one book series.
Well, this is a less of a commitment, so I would say
I would highly recommend it.
I don't know for sure, but I think a lot of our listeners are probably our age or so, and some of them might be I don't really read the new Star Wars stuff. I like the older stuff, and that's all well and good, but if you take one recommendation from us, read these. These are so good. And if you like the Jude Watson books that we then you will love these. Or if you like, just good Star Wars storytelling. This is what I want from Star Wars at this point. Are just original characters in familiar settings and familiar I want the universe to feel like a universe, because some people are I want all new everything. I'm well, I still want it to feel like it's part of the same world. But I do want new characters, and these new characters obviously tie into Rebels, which is a show I already love. But I will say, just I don't know what I'm saying. I'm rambling. Check these books out. They're awesome.
All right. That's Servants of the Empire. Thank you, Mr. Frye. We had a great time. Next week...
What are we doing? Do we know yet?
Okay, I think we should do the thing that we have planned, but we have a guest coming on the show. They're going to review a book with us. We're going to talk about a movie, and then we're going to talk about some other stuff. It's actually a tie-in to a podcast Tim and I recorded with this guest.
Many years ago.
That
is not online anymore, I don't think.
I think it's over 6 years ago we did this. And so this is part 2. I hope he should put them on YouTube or something.
Are we doing this? Is this next week for sure? Or do we know?
Here's what I say. We should contact him. and if he can't do next week, then it'll be the following week. So I say there may or may not be an episode next week.
Well, if there's not an episode, you're responsible for whatever we put on the feed.
Okay, let's
so
try to get
come up with one of your great tool lists or something.
He's got the book.
I know he has the book, but he's also starting the school year.
Yeah,
so he might be pretty busy. So
yes, we should contact him, see where he stands.
Right.
That book, we will announce what that book is. That book is Origami Yoda.
The Strange Case of
Origami Yoda.
So,
we are not doing that series.
We're just doing the first one.
We're just doing the first book, and that author did go on to later write a book that we will be covering definitely in October, The Mighty Chewbacca and the Forest of Fear, that I know Tim is extremely excited for.
All right, well, hopefully there's an episode next week. If not, we'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully. Again, we should maybe come up with a backup. We'll talk off air.
Okay, all right.
But anyway, for now...
Until the books are due back,
the library is closed. Padawan Library is hosted and produced by Tim May and Levi Peretic. It is edited by Tim May. Our theme song is by The Astral Project. Our artwork is by Freddie Funbuns. Padawan Library is copyright 2021. Tim May and Levi Peretic. All rights reserved.